So now I want to continue our 3-week conversation about hope, peace, and joy. And I want to talk briefly about joy and do my best to share a bit about how I've been making sense of this in my own life right now. So we've got a bit of ground to cover this morning, so let's get right to it. In a story made famous by Charlie Brown and also the Bible, we know that according to Luke chapter 2, there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in clothes lying in a manger." I will bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Joy is a consequence of the event of Jesus's birth. But not just his birth. Luke's telling of the Jesus story talks about joy at least 12 times. And in the entire Bible, depending on how we want to translate some things, joy shows up nearly 250 times. When many of us consider joy, we think of joy as being cheerful, joy as being vibrant, joy as being happy. And that's good. One way of talking about joy that I keep coming across and that I actually find really helpful is describing joy as a good feeling in the soul. Joy as a good feeling in the soul. I'd love to hear Shane Claiborne say that phrase because I feel like it should have a little twang to it. Joy is a good feeling in the soul, like a goodness that is rooted so deeply in our bones that it can't help but be expressed externally. And to be clear, this expression of joy or this way of thinking about joy has very little to do with our external circumstances, but much more to do with something that is experienced within us and then is expressed externally. Joy is a good feeling in the soul. And of course, we can't talk about Advent or Christmas or the holiday season, whether it's in a religious setting or any sort of cultural conversation. We can't do that without talking about joy along with it. So what I'd like to invite you to do is either on the Zoom chat, if you're with us in Zoom, or on the Facebook as a comment, is I want you to briefly share a Christmas or holiday memory from your life that you associate with joy. Maybe even as I was talking about joy, the memory came up for you. A Christmas or holiday memory from your life that you associate with joy. And I'm not saying explain it or tell the whole story. Like, well, it all started 14 years ago while I was at the mall. No, like you give us a word or a phrase or a sentence. Like, so for example, a Christmas or holiday memory that I associate with joy. The first is going to Grandpa's house. The second for me is singing at church. Now, I told you not to elaborate on yours, but maybe while a few of us share a couple, I'm going to elaborate on mine. So the first memory from the holiday season I associate with joy, going to Grandpa's house. For my entire life, as far back as I can remember, we've always gone to my grandpa's house on the afternoon of Christmas for dinner and gifts and dessert. And even though over the years, the party's gotten bigger and as family gatherings get bigger, family gatherings can get more complicated. But even though the gathering's grown and there's always more complications, it's still been this joyous event. My grandpa's now 82. And up until this year, he still hosted it at his house and made dinner. And when I think about this memory, I feel a good feeling in my soul. This year, I also feel a bit of sadness around not being able to go to his house and see him on Christmas because of the pandemic. Couple coming in here, beautiful. Walking out to the road to look at our house, to look at the Christmas lights, seeing amazing Christmas decorations in Disney World when we spent Christmas break there. Going to my parents' house, also Christmas programs at church, and they handed out oranges. The second one for me that I associate with joy is singing at church or with the gathered community, cozy late night fires with my family, looking at our stockings on Christmas morning. A few more popping up here now. For me, singing at church. And don't be confused by what I'm saying. I don't mean like performing. That would not be a joyous occasion for anyone. I just mean singing Christmas songs with people I love. That memory of being able to do that so many times is a good feeling in my soul. And this year, of course, I feel sadness around that because we won't be able to do that together in the ways that I remember. I bet for many of us, if I, yes, monkey bread. Yes, monkey bread. That is that. I have a good feeling in my soul when I remember monkey bread on Christmas morning. The invitation to share memories that we associate with joy, a good feeling in our soul. We can all come up with some things like that. But I also bet for many of us, we could also come up with some non-joyful holiday memories from our lives. Holidays, family, friends, joy and hope and peace. It's complicated. It always has been. And I think more than ever this year. This fall, our team was deliberating on like what on earth do the holidays look like for open circle programming this year? And I felt initially a lot of strong emotions around this. I was having like a pretty negative emotional response to thinking about the holidays in general, because I knew the holidays were going to mean missing out on a lot of things that bring me joy and that I love. And because of this, at first, I felt really strongly like that personally, I didn't even want the holidays this year, not in my life, like my own life, not with Open Circle, because of so much frustration and loss and pain around COVID. And like holidays aren't going to be holidays during the pandemic. So I would rather not have anything than try and do it differently. Like Jesus doesn't get to be born this year, not in my life, not at Open Circle. There's no room at the end, like literally there's no room for him to be born. We need the beds at the hospital. If we can't wear masks, we don't get Jesus. Like we'll try again next year. Like this was my like honest, like emotional response to even imagining the holidays this year. And I know you can relate to some of this. But then after sort of like processing that, like the pendulum swung, like, and I wanted more holiday stuff than ever, like all of it, even if it's different, sweaters and pajamas and hats and Zoom cocktails or whatever. Like, in my front yard right now is an underfunded museum of hand-me-down Christmas inflatables and decorations and lights. Like plugging in Christmas lights is my favorite part of the day right now. And I've had this like strong desire to sort of dress up any sadness or disappointment that I have around the season with as much like holiday stuff as possible. I've ridden this pendulum swing over the past several months when thinking about the holidays and even trying to think about like, what does joy even look like in this season? And I think that's okay. And if you've felt some of this in your own way, I think it's okay too. It can be really challenging to know how to even approach longings for hope, peace, joy in the holidays that are wrapped in tradition and sentimentality and relationships and expectations during any year. And here we are this year. And yet, those who first shared this story of Jesus's birth said it will bring joy. Okay, fine. Here we are. Now we're talking about it. So if that's true, if the event of Jesus's birth brings joy, for me, my next natural questions are, okay, well, how do we get some of that joy? How can I have some of that joy? Where can we find some of that joy right now? And I think on one level, for me, these questions are good questions, really natural questions. And if you share some of those questions, I think it's good. And I think these are important questions to be asking during the disorder of life right now, doing everything we can to find joy. How do we get a little more joy, to experience goodness in the soul as often as we can, in as many healthy ways as possible? This is a necessary and important effort. But like, what about when we don't find it? Like, what about when we can't find joy? What about despite our best efforts, no matter how hard we've tried, we don't have a good feeling in the soul, or we're a bit lacking in the joy department? I know this is true for a lot of people these days. And I think it actually reveals sort of a core problem with religion, much of religion in general, which we'll talk about further this winter and spring when we resume our other teaching series around the non-essential way. But this reality that religion often just offers prescribed ideals about how we're supposed to be feeling. And if we're not feeling that way, then something's wrong. And those prescribed ideals don't often intersect with our actual lives or the depth of our actual experience, whether it be joy or whether it be sorrow. So like, what about in this season of joy when we can't find it, especially when we're supposed to be finding it? Because everything from Luke chapter 2 and Charlie Brown and Starbucks and everywhere else is saying it's a season of joy. I wonder if maybe the invitation right now might be to spend less energy trying to find joy and instead do everything we can to allow joy to find us. Maybe the invitation is to spend less energy on trying to find joy and instead do everything we can to allow joy to find us. And here's what I mean. I don't actually believe that we can manufacture by our own efforts and striving authentic emotions or thoughts or spiritual states. We can't manufacture our own growth and transformation. I can put as many Christmas inflatables in my front yard as I want. I can wear the stuff because I want to experience joy, and it might spark something. But it's probably not going to happen from the outside in. It might not bring a good feeling to my soul. I think deep down, we all know this on some level, because when somebody looks at a difficulty or a challenge that we're experiencing at any time in our lives and says, well, you just have to find the joy in this. You might feel anger or frustration, but you got to find the joy in this. When people say things like that, when we can't find the joy or when we're having difficulty, it really brushes against honoring the experience that we're having. Like, you think I don't want to have a good feeling in my soul? Like, you think I'm not trying to find joy in this situation? The Apostle Paul talks about joy and love and peace and patience and kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. He talks about these things as the fruit of the Spirit. And Paul might say that the experience of joy or love or peace or any of these other things is evidence that the Spirit of God is at work in our lives. And where the Spirit is at work, there's joy, there's fruit. And where there's joy, anywhere, you can trust that the Spirit, the mystery of God, is somehow at work. Another way of talking about this that might feel a little more natural for some of us is just to say that joy comes to us as a gift. It's not of our own doing. It's not of our own finding. It is something that finds us. And how all of that actually works is a mystery. And regardless of any of our circumstances, if any of us have any amount of desire for joy to find us, to have a good feeling in our souls, really the most we can do is to make room for that possibility. The most we can do is to cooperate with the potential of having joy spring forth in us and in our lives. Cooperate with the potential of having a good feeling in our souls. And back to the actual Christmas story, I think the Christmas story offers an important archetype for this reality of how we might experience these things. So back to Luke chapter 2. I'm going to start reading in verse 26. Again, familiar passage, but I want to look at it maybe in a little bit of a different light. Luke chapter 2, verses 26 through 38. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. It's amazing. The story is so awesome. Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end." "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin?" The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she, who is said to be unable to conceive, is in her 6th month, for no word from God will ever fail." "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May your word to me be fulfilled." Then the angel left her. Again, this is an amazing story. It's a beautiful story. And part of, for me, why it's so amazing and beautiful is because it's weird. Like, if we can get out of all of the holiday stuff and the familiarity that this story brings and actually asks just some very basic questions, it's strange. It's so interesting. Other translations to Mary's response to this strange encounter in Luke sound more, can be translated like this: "Here I am, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." So Mary's response to all of this: "Let it be with me according to your word." In Latin, the word fiat is translated as "let it be" or "let it be done." After all this, Mary says, "Fiat, let it be. Let it be done." And we've talked about this story before. It's been well over a year at Open Circle since we've talked about this, but it's important to mention that the God of this story isn't a God who strong arms impoverished Middle Eastern teenage women into having his babies, right? That's not a helpful imagination of who God is or what this story is even about, whatever all that means. This all comes as an invitation to Mary. And Mary has agency in this story. And her fiat, her "let it be," is not passivity. It is an active acceptance to the invitation. It is an active acceptance of reality and what is true. And this fiat, this looking at the invitation and looking at reality and saying, "Let it be," this allows the mystery of God to unfold in her life and in our world. And of course, for her and the world, nothing's ever the same. This story is the beginning of Mary giving birth to new creation. And it's an echo of Genesis chapter 1, the beginning of the Bible, where that story begins with fiat lux. Let there be light. Let it be light. And the mystery of God unfolds. And nothing is ever the same. You might think, okay, even though this is a strange story and a weird invitation, proposition to Mary, at the end of the day, God was still like, you're going to give birth to the king of the whole universe. And maybe a let it be response, giving agency to that movement. It wouldn't be too difficult for any of us. It'd be fair to say, well, maybe my circumstances are a bit different than God creating the universe. That a let it be for me is saying let it be to some really difficult things. There's another fiat, another let it be in Luke's gospel, which essentially he sort of bookends his telling of Jesus's life with these two fiats, with these two let it be's. Luke chapter 22, verse 39. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down, and prayed, "Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. Betrayal, arrest, torture, murder, forsakenness. Jesus, Mary's son, seems to know that what lies ahead for him is literally going to be hell. And he asks God for another way. And eventually, after the wrestling and the churning, Jesus says, "Not my will, God, but yours." In Latin, fiat. Let it be. Let it be done. Again, Jesus has agency here. This let it be is not passivity. It's an active acceptance to the invitation, an active acceptance of reality and what is true. And in response to the let it be, the mystery of God unfolds, and nothing is ever the same. Fiat. Let it be. Friends, I don't know what it is that you're carrying these days. I don't know what each of you might be facing. I don't know what the holidays mean for you right now. I don't know if you've got a good feeling in the soul and the womb of new creation is ready to birth something beautiful in your life, or if it feels like you're sweating drops of blood in sorrow and in anguish. I don't know. I can only offer that maybe right now, your life, my life, our lives together, December 2020, maybe we need to surrender our own agendas. Maybe we need to let go of our prescribed religious ideals. Maybe we need to accept the loss of traditions in the changing of relationships. Maybe we don't need to find joy or hope or peace. Maybe all we need to do is let it be. And in doing so, allowing joy to find us. And trust how the mystery of God will unfold in each of us and in our world. Maybe as we end this portion of our time together, if you're willing, maybe just hold your hands open in front of you. Close your eyes. Take some deep inhales and exhales. And maybe in your own way, in your own words, with a couple of these exhales, just say, let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Thanks, everyone.